So LeBron James had quite the weekend again. 2 triple-doubles as the Cavaliers won both games of their back-to-back. In fact, Cleveland's now won 18 of its last 19 and is actually within breathing distance of the East #1 seed, if you care about that sort of thing, which generally LeBron does not. Here was what he does care about, though, the MVP. And it was interesting to hear him actually acknowledge it. On Saturday, LeBron said, quote, "It would mean a lot to win again. Not just because he wants a 5th trophy, a number that would match Michael Jordan, but because winning it in his 15th season would pretty much upend the accepted norm of how an NBA player's career is supposed to go, especially when we're talking about a guy who's continually playing into June. Really, it doesn't feel humanly possible for someone who has played that many minutes of basketball to be doing what LeBron is doing right now. His 28 points per game is the best in 8 years. His assists and field goal percentage are career highs. Career highs for a guy who, again, has already had a career featuring 4 MVP seasons. Of course, it helps he's currently the only superstar on the floor for his team. His usage rate's actually not that high, lower, in fact, than what he averaged in his seasons with Kyrie Irving. But still, it's undeniable. Every game is basically LeBron's symphony to conduct. And when Isaiah Thomas does come back, that could all change. I mean, we've certainly seen LeBron curtail his own game in the past to make teammates more comfortable. And even if it doesn't change, there's also the matter of James Harden, who is just putting up ridiculous numbers in Houston, all while integrating Chris Paul and leading a Rockets team that, I don't know, may possibly never lose a basketball game again. Let's be clear. Harden is the leading candidate right now. Barring an injury, he will almost certainly end the season putting up more gaudy numbers than LeBron. His team's a wrecking ball, and there's also the narrative that after so many seasons as an MVP bridesmaid, it's Harden's award to lose. But LeBron is certainly making it interesting with narratives of his own. The whole age thing, and then that he's also doing all of this while shouldering a league-wide leadership role on social issues. Last night, as he played less than a mile from the White House, he wore these equality sneakers, then spoke eloquently afterward about the importance of safeguarding Americans' rights. Even though, as he put it, quote, "We all know who's at the helm here." Will that factor into anyone's MVP voting? Who knows? We're still only about a third of the way through the season. There are still a lot of conversations left to be had on this. But with LeBron James turning 33 in 2 weeks, those conversations are only getting more spicy. So who better than to ask this than a guy who played with LeBron James on the Cleveland Cavaliers? Carlos, what do you think LeBron needs to do to sort of shift the narrative and jump ahead of James Harden in this MVP race?
Yeah, I think he's doing it. I mean,
really?
I think he's playing as well as he can play. I think he's put up a triple-double almost the last 13 games. I think he's averaging a triple-double right now.
He's averaging a triple-double for this winning streak, yeah.
Right, and, with a team without Isaiah, Tristan Thompson is out. He's carrying the load like an MVP would. He's putting up crazy numbers, his best numbers in years. And let's be honest, he's been the best player in basketball the last how long?
I mean, getting into my split the MVP conversation.
You know what I mean?
Continue.
So I'm not, but by no means am I knocking James Harden.
Yeah.
He's putting up video game numbers and the Rockets are having an incredible season. But take into account LeBron also, they had a slow start trying to implement D-Wade and the new players that they got, Crowder, what have you. And now all of a sudden they're in the second place and a blimp behind the Celtics. So very impressive what he's doing right now.
This is shaping up to be one of the true Sophie's Choice MVP races of all time. I think this is LeBron's best season. And, I mean, you're talking about the true shooting percentage, 65.3%. By the way, best block rate of his career. I mean, about to tie his best rebound rate. I mean, best assist rate. And as you said, and I had the straw poll posed to me last week, I still have LeBron as a slight #1. And I think the thing for me, and maybe it's just an age thing, to do this in your 15th
There we
season,
go. It is hard to
if you're going to introduce narratives into the race, and we always do introduce narratives, to me, that is the one. I think ultimately, it'll come down to the voters' minds. If Houston takes the #1 seed, I think you'll see Harden get it, provided that the stats remain pretty much the same as they have. But, if the Cavs take the #1 seed, not that they ever care, I mean, I think this is LeBron's best season.
Okay, so this gets into, and again, anyone who watches the show regularly knows how I feel. I think we are trying to do too many things with the MVP. I feel like we should have 2 different awards. A lot of other leagues, football has different awards, the NHL has different awards. Who is your best statistical player? Who is having the best statistical season versus who is your best player? Who is the guy who everyone says, oh, that's the best player in the world? And this comes into some of those other factors too. I mentioned the social issues component. I don't think it's a small thing to be a leader in the league on social issues and to take the brunt of what that means, the idea of getting all these people who are upset with you for doing that coming at you, the extra pressure that brings, putting the spotlight on you. Do you think voters will take that into account at all as what it means to be an MVP of the league?
I mean, I'm curious, you think if they should?
No, I mean, I think it's a different topic. I think I applaud him for doing that because it's something a lot of athletes, we've shied away from talking about political, topics, but he's, like you said, ran to the forefront of it with the league and been very vocal about it, as he was last night with the equality shoes and speaking about it after the game. It's very impressive, but I don't think it comes into play when you're talking about his play on the court. His play on the court speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a hard time introducing persona into it. It's tough, and I admire it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it should affect my vote.
I'm thinking of it less as a persona thing, or gee, it's impressive that he does that,
It's an
but
achievement
more
unto
of,
itself?
But no, more of the idea of that it adds something to making your season harder. That is the way I am thinking of it, is the fact that, hey, in between thinking about basketball and doing all of the other things that he does to get his body in shape after 15 seasons of going to play and the extra work that entails, which is really what we're talking about with the narrative of that, is also, hey, he's taking the time to think about this stuff, do this stuff, and then frankly deal with the reaction to it, because the reaction is significant.
100%.
It is another thing of slings and arrows that you're taking all the time and still producing on
I
the
think for
court.
the NBA fan base, it might help more than it hurts, though.
Well, that's certainly true.